If you've ever wondered why so many modern homes, even the expensive ones, fall apart at the first sign of forced entry, you're not alone. Back during World War II, soldiers, engineers, and even ordinary civilians had to make every door, wall, and bolt count. They didn't have the luxury of steel factories running at full capacity or hardware stores stocked with high-end locks. What they did have was ingenuity, necessity, and a constant threat pressing against their doors. Out of that pressure came one of the most practical and powerful home defence upgrades ever used, the World War II door reinforcement trick. It's a method so simple, so brutally effective, that modern builders completely ignore it. Yet it could stop a kick-in or breach attempt cold even today. Rewind to wartime Britain and continental Europe. Bombs were falling, blackouts were constant, and the threat of invasion or looting was real. Families and soldiers knew that a locked door wasn't enough. In rural towns and city flats alike, people began to reinforce their doors using materials they already had. Scrap steel, old timber beams, iron brackets, and even salvaged bed frames. These makeshift barricades evolved into a standardized, military-tested technique known among engineers as cross-load door bracing. The concept was straightforward, but honestly just genius. Most doors, both then and now, tend to fail right at the hinge or latch point. You see, a strong lock doesn't really matter if the door frame itself splits. The WWII reinforcement method tackled this problem by spreading the impact force across the entire structure of the door instead of letting it concentrate at one weak spot. They'd start with a standard wooden door, the sort you'd find in barracks, basements, or family homes. Ticarded to the dry toddy with the gaged seed. I don't touch the crowd fans and to stand of rice, such a rice would say here. Who stays and says, the balls cast is so, readers. Anthony stands corner to corner. The braces could be steel strips, hardwood planks, or even thick iron bands salvaged from old shipping crates. These were bolted or riveted straight through the wood into metal backplates, distributing any impact along both diagonals. So when a door was kicked, rammed, or blasted with debris, the shock travelled through the cross pattern instead of just snapping a hinge or splintering the latch. Civilians picked up on the trick too. Families in London, Warsaw and Berlin built interior cross braces on their front and cellar doors, using whatever they could get their hands on. Old furniture, iron rails, or even bed frames. It wasn't pretty, but, well, it worked. Eyewitness accounts describe homes surviving near-miss blasts or forced entry attempts purely because their doors bent under pressure but didn't give way. That difference, flexing versus breaking, often meant survival. Fast forward to today, and the same principle has almost vanished. Modern construction focuses on convenience, speed, and aesthetics. Doors are lighter, often hollow, framed in soft pine, and secured with decorative locks that look tough but fail instantly under pressure. And that's a mistake. If you applied the same reinforcement method used in wartime bunkers to your own front door, you could multiply its resistance several times over. The materials are simple, really. All you need are a few lengths of 1.5-inch steel flat bar, a drill, and some carriage bolts. The process is almost laughably simple, honestly. First, remove the door from its hinges and mark an X from corner to corner. Then, just cut your steel strips to length and drill bolt holes at each intersection. Fasten them with washers and nuts right through the door panel. After that, reinforce the door frame itself by adding a steel strike plate that spans the entire latch side, anchored into the wall studs. Rehang the door and give it a test. You'll feel the difference immediately, I promise. It won't flex or shudder under force. It'll hold. This same trick wasn't limited to homes, not by a long shot. In the field, Allied engineers used it to protect makeshift command posts, ammo depots and radio huts. They couldn't always rely on concrete or sandbags, so they reinforced wooden structures from the inside using the same cross pattern. The result was flexible yet resilient walls and doors that could withstand nearby blasts. One well-documented example, if you will, comes from the siege of Tobruk back in 1941. Australian troops, showing remarkable ingenuity, fortified their dugouts using salvaged steel bars from destroyed vehicles. They bolted these bars in X patterns across doors and shutters. When artillery, you see, collapsed outer walls, those reinforced doors still held strong. This allowed the soldiers to seal off damaged sections and survive long enough for rescue. Quite the resourceful bunch, weren't they? Now, for modern survivalists and off-grid builders, this forgotten wartime trick, well, it's pure gold. You see, it's not just history, it's applied physics. Whether you're reinforcing a cabin, a storm shelter, or a home entryway, cross-bracing gives you mechanical strength that no lock can match. A triangle, as they say, doesn't fold, and an X pattern turns a weak, flat surface into a load-bearing shield. Quite fascinating, isn't it? Even lightweight materials benefit from it. If you're working with plywood or composite doors, use aluminum angle instead of steel. If you're reinforcing a shed or bunker, repurpose metal bed frames or old shelving, just like WWII civilians did. Add a continuous strike plate along the latch side for extra rigidity. It's a reminder that some of the best survival designs come not from luxury, but from crisis. The WWII door reinforcement trick was born of desperation, refined by soldiers and forgotten by builders, yet its effectiveness remains unmatched. In a world obsessed with smart locks and digital alarms, the simplest, most reliable form of protection still comes down to smart mechanical design and, well, just a few bolts. If you value history not just as a story, but as a lesson, maybe try this one yourself. Reinforce a door the way they did back in 1942. When every resource was scarce and every night was uncertain, these simple reinforcements stood between life and loss. They were proof that even in war, the best defense wasn't always high-tech. It was human ingenuity, muscle and steel. So, next time you close your door and hear that click, just remember, behind the modern comforts of home lies a century-old secret of survival, one forged in fire, pressure and necessity.